Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. If everyone could just grab their seats and turn off their cell phone ringer. You're allowed to take pictures, but just make sure the ringer is off. I'm going to be introducing Mira Blaustein to come up on stage to introduce the panel. She's, as you know, the executive director and the co-founder of the Woodstock Film Festival. So Mira, why don't you come on up? Thank you, Hope. Good morning, everybody. Hi. Sunday morning, huh? Sunday morning, the last day of this year's Woodstock Film Festival, which is the 20th. We have been doing this for a very long time. Before I bring the moderator and the panelists, I just want to tell you a little bit about the festival for those of you who do not know yet. That it is a 501c3, not-for-profit organization, and I just want, organizations such as ours really do rely heavily upon those who support us, and I want to take a moment and thank the likes of Marketech and 120dB Films and Gray Schwartz and Gigantic Pictures and BMI, and so many individuals and foundations. I'm saying many, but never enough. So if anybody wants to join this very elite group, the group who support us, the group who we love so much, please do. So this is the last day of the festival. We have been running since really Tuesday night because we had a pre-festival event back in Kingston at UPAC. And you're here at the Kleiner because this is where we do our panels. And the panels are something that's very, very close to my heart. This is when we get a chance to bring so many great, accomplished, engaging, thought-provoking, and game changers from the industry, whether they're actors or producers or directors or screenwriters, to here, to the Hudson Valley, and we introduce them to a new audience, yourselves. So it gives me great pleasure to bring up here this year's moderator of the Actors Dialogue, who has been with us truly since 2000. So this is also Martha's 20th Woodstock Film Festival. she and I have been already working together for a very long time. So Martha Frankel, if you can come up here, and we have an amazing group of actors who is joining her, and Martha will introduce them. Thank you all so much for joining us.
It's me.
That's you.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Shit, let's do this.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome. This is always so much fun, and this panel is going to be, very quiet and calm. You can tell by what's going on here already. So we have mints up here if anybody needs them. And,
They're $1.
Okay, I'll start with the guy on the end. That's Michael Chernus. The film he's here for is Inez and Doug and Kira. Got a beautiful shout out at the award ceremony last night. But you may know him from Orange is the New Black, Men in Black 3, Patriot. He played Slick Rick in Patriot. It's an amazing performance. Anyway, we're thrilled to have Michael with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next to him is Kathy Curtin. The movie she has here is called Inside the Rain. She's also on Orange is the New Black.
I have Imaginary Order here, too. That's another film.
You do?
Yes, beautiful film.
Everybody just step in if I don't know stuff, because clearly I don't. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's probably playing today, too.
No, it's...
No, and it's not. You missed it. Sorry. Really sorry, Kathy. She's also on Orange is the New Black and Stranger Things. So if you have any of those questions.
And Insecure and Homeland.
Okay, so I say to Tim, all the women on the panel are on Homeland, and he's like, really? Because none of you are on the same seasons, I don't think.
No, I was when they blew everyone up,
Yes.
third season. That was how they got rid of that cast.
Ron Niswander's around. We'll have to bring him in and talk.
Yes.
So thank you, Kathy. Next to her is Boone, Mark Boone Jr. The movie he's here with is Run with the Hunted. If you don't know him from Sons of Anarchy, you should just sit down and spend a year watching him because it's an amazing performance. Next to Boone is Talia Balsam. The movie she has here is South Mountain, a terrific movie. She's on Mad Men, Homeland. We're going to talk about that, how TV is the new movies, but we'll talk about that later. And next to me is Tim Guinea. Yeah, the amazing Tim Guinea. The film he has here is Ash, and you will get to see it. It's an astounding movie with an astounding performance. Tim's been on Homeland. He was in the movie Sweetland. He's on Hell on Wheels. Tim's a friend. We met sort of cute on a sort of a rom-com, if that's possible. No, we met cute, and he was at my house for dinner about 4 months ago, and I almost killed him. He wound up in the hospital with anaphylactic shock. So when I say to him, you want to come over for dinner, he's like, no, not really. So that's the panel here today. And one of the things I like to ask first is, what did you have to learn for the movies that you would never have learned on your own? Just jump in. We're not going to go in order, but what's one great thing you had to learn
In general, or just specifically
for a
to that
movie?
Oh.
No, for a movie.
Oh, okay.
Like playing the piano or...
I wish, or a language or something.
Yeah,
I haven't had to
something.
do that. Anyone else?
Well,
It's going to be a lively panel.
Yeah. Boone had to learn how to kayak. Unless he knew that before, I don't know.
I knew how to kayak. Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I knew how to kayak, yeah.
Okay, well, wow, all right.
Thank
So
you
my
for
ne-
coming.
Michael, you must have learned something for the movies.
I don't know that I can say I learned it, but when we shot Captain Phillips, I spent 6 weeks on a actual Maersk container ship, and had to shadow. There was a working merchant seaman crew the entire time, and so for every position that I played the chief mate. Tom Hanks played Captain Phillips, and the actual chief mate's name was Shane Murphy, and so I talked to him a bunch, and then sort of watched these guys work every day on this ship, and by no means do I know how to navigate or operate a container ship, but I did learn a ton about those guys' lives, and
That movie changed my life because it made me realize nothing is safe. They got on that ship with a ladder. They put a ladder up to the ship and got up and took it over. So after that, I was like, well, this place isn't safe. Anybody could put a ladder on the roof.
yeah, I mean, I think that shows the level of desperation that people were at in Somalia, though. The need for any kind of income. I think what Paul Greengrass directed that movie, what he did really well was not just victimize the quote-unquote pirates, or I mean, victimize the crew and make paint a bad picture of the pirates. I think it's because of a global economic situation that they were forced to do that.
Okay, so we'll skip that question. And if anybody thinks of something, just raise your hand and jump in anytime. And so TV is, a lot of you have been working in TV, but you all started in movies. So what's the difference there?
That's a huge difference. I worked in movies for like 30 years before doing any TV. I mean, a few television shows, but becoming a regular on a television show, you lose control of everything, because you just every week are handed the thing that you're supposed to do. And before that, anything I did in a movie, I had a time to discuss it and change it, and that was completely gone. So you become a victim of your
success.
your writer,
Yeah.
your showrunner, and it's.
And what about, I mean, I know Kit was here last year from Sons of Anarchy, and like people, is that his name?
Kim?
Kim.
Kim Coates?
Kim Coates. And people were talking to him in the street in a way that was really uncomfortable. Like, they thought he had, stuck that kid in the hole and burned him. Like, they really couldn't separate. They were like, that was fucked up, man. And he was like, yeah, I know. You mean,
That was his daughter in the show.
yeah. I didn't want to say that for the people who haven't seen it. I
Right.
didn't want to ruin it. But
Oh, sorry. It's many years ago now for me.
But TV is different because we're in our pajamas when we watch it. I mean, we're in our pajamas when we watch movies now, but we didn't used to be. People had to go out. And so TV brings you in a way that I think makes people feel really intimate with you, right?
I was on this show called The Good Wife, and the character I played was a detective who was very interested in the truth and didn't seem to care how that affected people. In the finale of one of the seasons, I went to Juliana Margulies and told her that her best friend had slept with her husband. And I was in LA a week or so after it aired, and somebody hit me in line for Starbucks, and there was this woman, and she said, "Why did you tell her about..." This is the craziest in fucking LA, where you think, this is bullshit, we're.
You're not going to hit
She was
me,
invested, I guess. Huh?
You're not going to hit me today, are you? Okay, that's good. Yeah,
You're
I
not
think
going to
it's...
feed me today, are you?
No. It really wasn't my fault about the peanut thing, because I shopped for stuff that didn't have peanuts, but somebody else brought some peanut cookies. That person is here today. I want you to freak. And so I'm not going to look directly at her, but
I want to tell you a story. I had a home in New York, an apartment. It burned to the ground, and I was homeless, and so I took a Dolph Lundgren karate movie in Thailand, and it was.
you don't have to make excuses.
It
Tim.
wasn't the most artistically fulfilling job I've ever had. So I'm allergic to nuts. So I have a buddy who's a welder, and I got this package in Thailand, and I opened it, and it was a little metal box painted red with glass on the front and a little chain with a little hammer with a walnut inside it. So it's my emergency suicide kit if it was too bad.
Just in case. So, I mean, some of you are on shows that really, Mad Men. Talk about what that was like.
I was going to say the difference, you're fortunate enough to have someone like Matt Weiner or a good showrunner or a good writer. Then I kind of like the process of not knowing the beginning, middle, and end if you're in good hands. And if you're not, you're screwed. So, and you don't have any control. So I think each of those mediums has certain challenges, obviously. But as television is progressing, I guess also just due to my age now, I'm sort of at peace with not knowing what's coming up, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Before I used to sort of be like, and with a movie you do have to know those things, like, because you're shooting out of order and you sort of really have to know what you're doing. And you sort of have to rely on that. And, but in this sort of medium, it's I don't know, there's something I kind of enjoy about it, so that you're sort of present with the character who doesn't know what their future is either.
All the films that you have here, all the films you're in here, touch on some really deep stuff, right? Tim's in a movie called Ash. I don't want to describe that movie because I don't want to give anything away, but talk about that and talk about all your movies, because every one of them is about mental illness, suicide, things that really abuse, things that are really we're talking about now. And it feels like this year the movies have a different tone, that they're not afraid to look at that. So talk about the films you're in here. I'm thinking about you, Talia, because...
You are, okay.
Yes, I am. I'm thinking about you, Talia.
well,
Because that
so
film is about, is really about the betrayal. It
Loss, fragility, family.
was shot on our road, Stevie. It was shot on
By
back
Marty's
there.
Deli, does anyone?
Yeah, it's my husband
Yeah.
and our friend, we all
He
live
was shot
right there.
at Hillary Brocker's, the director, and we shot at her mother's house for, 18 days. And shot it like a play, so it's 3 acts, basically, this movie. Shot in order, shot according to how she knew the house so well because we had no lights. We were using natural light. Shot according to what time of day the sun would come through the kitchen window. I mean, she had that mapped out so beautifully. And therefore only had about 7 people on the crew, so it was very low budget. The theme of the movie, though, about the loss and stuff, for me in particular, I was also at a point in my life, my son was going to college, where I was dealing with a very different part of my life and what moving on. And I think it deals very much in those themes for a woman with a family, with a very mixed family, different mothers, fathers, it's all over the place in that, and acceptance, really, of what's next. Again, not knowing your future, so,
It's called South Mountain. If you get to see it, it's really beautiful. And Boone, what about the movie you're in, Run with the Hunted? John's here today, the director, John Swab. So say nice things. No, I'm kidding.
No, I really am very proud to be in that movie. It's about again, a kind of a loss of innocence, I think is, that someone who sees something and acts upon it and really clearly changes his life seriously as a child, and how that, follows him, really affects his life for the rest of his life, basically. And it's such a strong piece. I really enjoyed what I did. It was a fun kind of a Oliver Twist story, sort of. John it's really like a poem. I think that movie, it's like something that you really experience rather than watch in a certain kind of way. It just kind of, you're inside of this story the whole time, and that's how the script read, and nothing, you don't really know where it's going when you read the script, and I really enjoyed that part of it. And it's the second movie I've done with him, a movie called Let Me Make You a Martyr, and he's come a long way in between, and it's really worth a watch, I think.
I was supposed to be in his next movie, but something happened, and I'm not. I was cut before I started.
Before he wrote it.
No, he wrote it, and he told me I was doing it. I'm going to let him tell you later why I didn't get the part, but that was sad. And Michael, the piece you're in really deals with suicide and race and...
The film is called Inez and Doug and Kira. Our director and writer is in the audience as well. And it's I think, a really gorgeous film. And yeah, there are like a lot of, for lack of a better word, like heavy topics that are, sort of wrestled with. There's mental illness, addiction, suicide. But I hesitate to say that the film is about any of those things, I think it's about, just sort of the human condition and how we all need to fill like some kind of hole in ourselves, and we grab for different things and each other, substances. It's a really gorgeous thoughtful, meditative film. But
And funny. I don't want people, it's funny, right?
yeah, there are certainly very funny moments. That it doesn't end super funny, but
What does really?
just to zoom out, you were saying like that this year there's a lot of films that are tackling like heavy stuff, and of course that's true throughout the history of cinema, but I will say like it's a really scary time to be alive right now, and maybe the one silver lining in living through this national nightmare is that there's better art being made than when people are a little more apathetic, that maybe filmmakers and playwrights and painters and just people are like a little more awake to the experience of being alive in this moment. And so that's exciting to be here at this festival, and people seem to be buzzing about the work that's being made, and I can't think it's just a coincidence. I think it's in response to this current moment.
Very much. And Catherine, what about the film you're in?
You know what I think is really fascinating about, I'm just going to talk about Inside the Rain for a second. Aaron, who made Inside the Rain, is, he has challenges, you know. He's challenged, and he's one of the coolest people. He wrote and produced and directed and starred in this film. And I watched it with the girl who, the woman who, in Imaginary Order, she came to the screening of Inside the Rain. And she turned to me and she said, I didn't know we were allowed to laugh at this subject matter. But we were allowed to laugh because it was made by someone who is within the dimension of the story, right? Within the dimension of this life situation. And so I thought that was really groundbreaking. And I'm very proud to be part of something where, you know, a person would say, are we supposed to be here? Is this okay? And there's so many things that are being opened up right now. There's so many things that are being broken right now, including our Constitution. And I think this is a time for all independent voices to come out. My problem with the whole situation is that the distribution platforms and the way that we can access movies is not open enough, right? And platforms like, I'm going to just take a second.
Good.
Platforms, you know, like an A24 or some of these companies that are including distribution within the whole gamut, and they're front-loading their budget so that they include prints and advertising, so that they don't come out with a film, do festivals, and then we're the only lucky ones who get to see it, right? But this is in its infancy. A redistribution of the wealth of art is in its infancy in this country. So that when you say we have all these great films being made, how are these great films getting to the people? Because we are the converted, right? We are the lucky ones. And so my question, you know, is what I'm really tired of and disgusted by is the lockdown on getting the word out. And that is part of, you know, NPR, PBS. Yes, there is Netflix, but we are all programmed algorithmically, right? Netflix, I love Netflix. They've employed me. I'm thankful. They paid my mortgage. I'm so grateful. But when they send me a list of what I should watch, it has to do with what I've already been watching, right? It has to do with when I turn on my phone, and, you know, I was listening to this computer scientist talk about this. When I turn on my phone and I put in cupcake, what's going to come back on my feed is different than cupcake on if you put it in. So we are all being prejudiced, segregated through our algorithmic programming. We are being programmed. And getting the art out in an open way is the challenge right now. And Netflix is beautiful, and they're doing what they are doing, but it's not enough. There's a lockdown between the people that are making it distributing it, owning it, putting it out there. And I don't know the answer, and I'd like somebody in this room, I want that dialogue going forward. And I'm angry about the content that I've seen in indie films festivals that I've fallen in love with. And I know no one ever is going to really see that film but the 10 people I was in that room with. And so that's a question that I really want at some point to deliver, you know. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm dying to know what Boone's cupcake feed would look like.
I know, I was ready to respond to that, like, what kind of cupcake do you like?
I don't want to see your cupcake, Boone.
Tim, talk about Ash, because when you were making this film, you texted me and said, I cannot believe they're going to make this film and release it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really strong.
Yeah. Ash is a movie about somebody with a specific form of OCD that that leads them into how do I
Dark
say?
and terrible things.
Really dark areas. It's a comic romp. No, it's not. It's but I want to sort of tag on to what you just said. This week I was battling zombie children on TV to pay my mortgage, and I've done a lot of shit in my life, and you know I think most actors will agree they've done some shit, and the movie I have here I love madly because I got to play a multifaceted character with extraordinary levels to it, with real actors that you're only as good as the people you play with, and the script and the director, with a whole passionate group of people. I was in a movie called Personal Velocity that screened yesterday too, Rebecca Miller thing. And I was just thinking how often it is that where you get to kind of refill that well inside you is in these movies that are not I had no zombies ripping my arms off in either of these things. And want to say thank you to the audience and the sponsors and all of that of this festival and every festival that gives some venue to the possibility of real moving stuff and stuff that is, sorry, I'm going down a rabbit
we're
hole.
with you.
But it's a funny thing, that movie versus TV thing, because, and I've done like those Marvel comic book movies, and they're very popular and very formulaic. It's really a formula. And it's good guy versus bad guy and all of this shit that the last thing we need right now is to lose the ability to think in gradation about people and to accept our own awfulness and beauty. And films like these, like the ones you get to see at festivals, let that experience happen. And that's a glorious thing that happens because filmmakers are brave and because audiences are brave and programmers are brave. And God bless the programmers here too, because a lot of the subjects they've taken on are tough subjects. So.
But cracking the algorithm that is kind of forced on us is the question: how to set up a platform that allows us to explore what all the great movies that actually are being made.
Yes.
Even I can't figure that out. Like I go into these, Roku and all the different Hulu and where do you find this? And that's the organizational. That's what I think is lacking. Someone to organize that is also an algorithm, I guess, but there's no money in it for them or something.
Right.
I don't know I don't know how, because you would think, but this is what I've always thought, that great content should attract people. It doesn't always work that way. Because people are looking for just they're not looking, so many people in the world, it seems, are just looking for what the old formula of movies, which is escape. And they don't want to be, taken into an OCD dark place. So many people, because that they're already living that.
Or 10-minute content.
10-minute
Talking about
content.
short form, like that's what people are looking for now.
Are they?
Short,
No, I don't,
Quibi, all these things that are
but
starting.
that's what
to-
they're telling us we're looking for.
Yeah,
They're telling it, that's what I'm saying, I
exactly.
just watched them tell me this on some news program, I'm like, that's not what I want to see. I mean, it's worked for people, but I was sort of like 10 minutes.
Well, we're going to see, because Scorsese's The Irishman is 3 hours, I think, right? We're going to see him. What?
I had
3.5.
I had a hilarious, hilarious. Roger
That's a
Ebert
bit of a
and I
start.
had this conversation about when he was working at the Chicago Sun-Times.
Sun-Times, yeah.
And one of his colleagues called him and said, I heard about this movie, A Room with a View, is it any good? And he said, it's fantastic, it's directed by this guy, it's got this guy, and incredible cinematography, beautiful story, da-da-da-da-da. Went on and on and on, and the guy said, yeah, I don't think I'd like that. And what he said was that he feels like, when people take long road trips, they often aren't going to look for the little tiny diner. They'll eat McDonald's because it's shit, but it's the shit that they know. And he said that was his sense with a lot of what we see in terms of movies is Iron Man 38 may not be a great film, but I'm comfortable because I know exactly what's coming.
I don't know, because, I totally agree with everything that you are saying. And then also, I feel slightly optimistic because there are shows that people are watching. I mean, people were watching Breaking Bad and, Orange and, shows that I mean, who would think that a show about women in prison would attract the audience that it did? And so I feel like I really believe that we would take in more stories, more content, more film. I think it's the way it gets to us. Right. And I think, yes, there are times on a Friday night that I am so tired and I have maybe 20 minutes in me of something, and I'm gonna turn on the TV and watch basically anything. But there are other times when I turn it on and I think, oh my God, take me, just take me someplace. Where do I go to the channel that takes me someplace? Yeah. And I feel like the BBC, it does something to its content that we are not doing. Like that BBC channel that they have out there now, and the BBC is putting people and stories and content in their own, platform that you can guarantee it's going to be something kind of interesting.
Well, is it that we don't?
Where is our BBC content
Well, it
channel?
used to be in the stores. Like you'd go to the video store. Alan is here from Allen's Alley, one of the great video stores in New York. And you'd go in and say, this was great. And he'd say, oh, well, how about these 16 movies?
Yes.
But
yes.
you know what he also did when Boone went in? He said, have you seen this cupcake show?
Show.
Over and over. All cupcakes.
Yes. No, but
Salted caramel.
I think that's part of it, is that we don't have that interaction. So it comes up, I mean, I laugh because we just got TV this year. It's a long story, but for all these years, we've only watched DVDs. Now we have access to Roku and Netflix and Amazon, and we don't know what the hell's going on. And they keep telling us what they think we'd like, and then we're like, we don't like this. This is not, just because we liked that one show doesn't mean that we want to spend our life there. And I think it's because we don't talk to people. I mean, we do, because we ask, what are you watching? What do you like? What's good? But I don't know. I just watched something that I hadn't heard that much about, but since I watched it, everybody told me they did unbelievable on Netflix, about the serial rapist. And now I went on Netflix and it wants me to watch the darkest shit because it thinks I'm interested in serial rapists instead of police procedurals, you know?
The way to break the algorithm, this guy on the, as I listen to this computer thing, I listen to all of these things, right? And he said the way to break your personal algorithm is you need to start, liking things that are out of your box. So you need to start liking, just even if you disagree with it, even if it's nothing to do with your life, even you just confuse the computer, right? Because that's what you have to do, and it will reset. It will constantly reset and open up your algorithm. So create the algorithm resistance in your personal life.
Look at Steve, he has no idea what
But still, it is where to get to the better,
That's the question. Yes.
Why is that not a part of someone's, like you say, where is our BBC?
Where is our BBC?
Who is,
Yeah.
In Britain.
IFC.
who?
In Britain.
Yeah.
In Britain.
Yeah, they've,
Soon they'll be asking us, though. We have some time to still talk, but let's start throwing some questions out if you guys have questions. Mr. Orlando, is Rick Orlando? Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
hello,
Hope-
this is great.
Hope with the
Hello, everybody.
microphone, sorry.
Just want to say, I started in the underground music scene in the 70s in New York and Boston. What you're talking about is important, but the best content was the stuff that was never available to the mainstream on a remote. The best content is what influenced what ends up on the mainstream on the remote. So the people that are making the really important films that are small but brilliant, when they become, if they became something you can find on Netflix, people might look at them a little differently, not as an influencer, but as just more of something else. So it's important to remember that the good stuff is always below the surface, making the mainstream stuff a little better. What do you think of that?
I want to take my fist, and I want to take the mainstream. I want to take the mainstream, and I want to do this.
that's why we're there.
That's what I think.
Well, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
That's what the,
But it's
that's
not
what the,
enough.
they
It's
do.
not enough.
The people who are, come up through those places, they try and do that as much as possible, but then they, keep getting more money, and then they stop doing that, and some sort of.
Where would Gervonta without Bleach Black? Who knows who Bleach Black is, right? Those are the bands that they listen to, and one of them cracks through, like Orange cracks through, something like, there's some great stuff on Netflix, Amazon, that does crack through, Fleabag, but there's so much that doesn't. But I think that's what influences the next level. So let's all be happy to be influencers.
But great art has a purpose. And the purpose of great art is to ennoble us, is to enlighten us, is to lift us, is to save us. I would not be on this stage today if it was not for art. And so some of this art that is out there that is bubbling below the surface, it has a purpose, and that purpose is not being served, because its purpose is to guide and save and spiritually provide for, and we are living in, and anybody who disagrees with me, take me outside. But we are living in a hungry society. We are living in a society that is within the vacuum. And art has the ability also to educate. And we are living in a system of crappy education.
Very good. I'm not the moderator, but I want to ask you one more question on that. Don't you think now, with the Netflix, the Amazons, the Hulus, it's better than it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago?
I don't care about better.
Well, it's
I
improved.
want more.
Come and get it.
Well, no, but it is up to us to keep searching and pushing and finding, and, it is, it just is.
Do you feel like the movies you're talking about, Kathy, are being made?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the movies are out there, and if it wasn't for my friends, I'd never get to see them.
Exactly.
Right. You mean your friends telling you what's out there or showing you?
Yeah, they're my friends, they both, and they drag me.
Yeah.
Be like, let's go, you know? And I grew up in New York. I live in New York. What about the person who lives in, you know, butt fuck whatever? You know?
I
What
think that's in
about that
Idaho.
person?
They gotta move to New York.
I don't know, though.
Michael, I think you're on.
Is he from Buttfuck?
He's not from Buttfuck. He's 2 towns adjacent.
I'm the next
Adjacent.
town over. I'm buttfuck adjacent. Buttfuck was too expensive. Buttfuck is very gentrified at this point.
It's hipster Buttfuck now.
Yeah. Buttfuck is the new Brooklyn.
I hope that's not the tagline for this when it goes up online. These people talking about Buttfuck. I think there's some, I'm sorry, but I'll be quick. I think there's a feeling that because there's Hulu and Roku and whatever, that the content is out there. And I often feel a dearth of content myself. I often say, but I feel lucky because my friends do show me. And, we watched Larry Fessenden's Frankenstein the other night because he's a friend and he told us that we should watch it. So we did, and it was great. And so I feel like we live in that rarefied thing. And I'm not willing to give it up, but I don't love it, okay? But I think it's true, when somebody says, a friend here, Kitty, told me that I should watch Fleabag. And my husband and I turned it on, and we didn't really get it. And so we stopped watching it until I realized we had started with season 2. That we would have been a lot better off starting with season 1. And when we did, I adored it. But I was like, this is too confusing. Like, who are these people? They seem to know each other for a long time now. But then I watched it and loved it. So I feel like that's the way we have to, we have to beat the drum of good art. Really, the truth is, the only people who have ever cared about art are artists. Then it seeps down into other people, but it's always been artists talking about painters and writers and movies, right? I mean, it's not...
Here's the thing.
That was
I think
racist.
it's telling that we're spending a lot of time at an independent film festival talking about television. I think,
Okay, that's it.
and I think all of these platforms. It's the golden age of the second golden age of television. There isn't a dearth of material in terms of TV shows. We're at a different point. We're not all just watching Law and Order anymore. Like, there's a ton of television, but what these devices do and these streaming platforms do is they make us stay at home as opposed to going to the cinema. The act of gathering together in a darkened room and watching projected images is becoming an old-timey thing. So it's not, I don't think, and I agree, I think like the next generation always responds to the generation before it. So like Netflix was like cool and edgy 7 years ago, but now there's gonna be stuff made in response to streaming television. The problem though is it's so expensive to make a film. It doesn't cost much to plug in an amp and play 3 chords and the truth. Like, it doesn't cost anything to make some kinds of art, but to make an indie film, you're already looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars that you've got to raise. So how do we make it easier for a young filmmaker to break in? And I feel like either now you've got a $1 million movie or a $300 million movie, and what happened to the like smaller studio picture, but that was a $2 to $5 million movie that was about people in a room talking about stuff. That isn't getting made anymore. But I think sitting up here and railing against television when we're all employed by television is stupid. Like, this is a film festival and we're talking about how I think people don't go to see movies anymore. They equate movie with Netflix. They equate movie with Amazon. That's watching a movie on your TV at home.
Can I pick up there and then I'll totally shut up? But anyway,
I doubt it.
So I grew up in New York City at a time when there were art houses, right?
Yeah.
And I was like a sheltered kid, and I would sneak off at like 14 and wander over to the East Village or the Upper West Side, and I would go to these art houses, and I would go in alone, and it was like I was going to a pornographic cinema. I would sit there and I would watch some of the most brilliant art, and that's how I knew that it was out there. And that's how I knew it could change me. And those tiny cinemas don't exist anymore. All our art houses are being torn down and turned into Duane Reads. And, you know, that's part of our problem. And the other part of our problem is that the platforming for indie film is not profitable enough, right? Because if it was more profitable, then more people would get to see it, there would be more money put into it, you would be able to get more money to make your film, and also people would go out to see film more. The whole paradigm of how we see films needs to change, whether it's putting a burlesque show up before the movie or screening, having a movie have live music. We got to get people in the seats again so that we form that collective company and that we can break through to people having their minds blown again by just showing up to the theater, and or having their minds blown, I guess, through Netflix. But I don't know.
All right, there's somebody in the back. Oh, we'll get to you.
Hi. I produce very low-budget films, and I've worked with Kathy on a couple. I want to say something slightly optimistic. It feels like because you all do work on shows that pay pretty well, then you can be in independent films, and that's a blessing. So I think, you know, there is a silver lining to the work you're all getting on these big shows, because then you can work for very little on the films that I help produce. So, and you're here, which is really important too. So I want to thank you all for being in small films.
The problem now is they're taking that away even as every day. The ability for us as layman actors to even, they're taking away our salaries every day now to work in television because I don't know why they get away with it, because our union allows them, and it's, anyway. And I've worked on many, I've been doing this for a long time and worked on 50 first-time writer-director movies, and, you know, never made any money on that, and made some great movies during that time that you know, that I cherish for the rest of my life. But I see the problem moving forward is for young actors who can't, who aren't getting paid and will not get paid, and how do they survive working on movies that you know, on the inside these platforms that are somehow generating huge amounts of money. Like, you know, Netflix makes $1 billion cash a month on subscriptions. $1 billion a month cash. Subscriptions only. So, and and now we don't get residuals, and now we don't, you know, they don't want to pay us residuals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, for young people, yeah, okay, I mean, where do they go? How do they break that lock?
Yeah, because at least
People are-
TV used to be the money factory, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. They're
Yeah.
taking that away. They're ruining the, whatever. It's a tough
Fuck them.
problem. Yeah, well.
Welcome to the Grumpy Actors panel.
Later on, we're going to have the happy
Cupcakes.
actors panel. Maybe. Back there.
Hi. I love this discussion because it feeds into the question of all the arts and how to reach people with the things that are really meaningful, the things I remember from childhood, from the theater and film, and from my youth. But one thing that's very hopeful is to know that now that Nielsen can do point of sale readings of how books sell, we know that Jane Austen outsells Tom Clancy every single year. Yeah, and that War and Peace is the best-selling book every year. And so people are hungry for culture, for being exposed to things that are provocative, that are thoughtful. They just don't have a way to get it. It isn't presented to them. It isn't cheap, and it's hard to make. So I think you really, presented a really important discussion because film is one of the great ways that the human condition is explored, and that's not in a Spider-Man film. So
And Netflix refuses to issue the viewer, the actual true viewership of, because they can monitor all of it, and they will not tell us what those numbers are.
I love Danish films, Macedonian films, things that nobody ever sees. And, where's the BBC channel that is going to show this rich cache of, material that's out there? Somebody in this room has the bucks to do this. Come on.
Raise your hand. Don't be shy. Don't get excited and become a writer, though. I don't want you guys to think, well, War and Peace, I'm going to do that because I'm a writer. That doesn't work. But we do have more platforms than you guys. I will say that. If you're a writer, there are a million ways. But they also don't want to pay writers anymore either. They want you to work for free.
That's everything.
Yeah.
We're not the only, I mean, that's your job at Walmart and your at
Right.
Baskin Robbins. I mean, that's just the sort of.
Starts at the top, and
Nickel
they
and
all,
dime
they
thing.
all want all of it.
On a lighter note, I'm looking forward to seeing The Irishman coming out, and I'm a Scorsese fan. I just read something very interesting. I don't know if you're aware of this. A new technology that this
The
movie is-
de-aging.
with the face.
Yeah, de-aging it's
Yes,
called.
basically, you could be a teen. You have 50 years of youth left, because they could take you at 14 and move you up to 80, no makeup.
Yeah, but will they pay you?
No. They'll pay you as a 14-year-old.
That's simple. They don't. They won't.
But what do you think of this new technology? How do you think this is going to expand? Because a lot of crazy things they could do with this.
Have you all seen what he's talking about? Have you seen De Niro in the Irishman? There are parts when he's 40, and he really looks 40. He doesn't look like De Niro looked at 40, but he looks like a younger version of the man he is now. It's very odd.
Well, now he looks like Regis Philbin.
Exactly. So he doesn't look like a young De
doesn't.
Niro
In the
or a
Joker,
young Regis, but he
like
looks.
Regis Philbin.
Exactly.
I get a little scared by technology. I'm very often aware of people crying in movies where they're not crying.
Yeah, when
I
there's no
see
snot.
these digital tears all the time, which suggests to me a formulaic sense of what human emotion is. That when we hear somebody dies immediately, which never happens to me,
Cold.
because I hate human beings.
Yeah.
No, but I fear it a little bit because I worry a little that the great happy emotional accidents that happen won't get portrayed, and our great emotional diversity doesn't get portrayed. But that's just me because I want control, maybe.
But they can also steal your images now. Like, there's a whole thing that I kind of missed, but SAG was voting on. Remember, like, they sent out a whole thing to us about how they're protecting, like, they could just take your image and put it somewhere. And how do you protect your image now? Like, you're definitely not going to get paid if somebody just steals your image, right? They used to be able to just steal your script, but now they can steal your script and your image. So it's interesting. It's a fascinating time.
Humphrey Bogart in there.
Yeah, they could put Humphrey, like,
Well, with
you know.
just talking about this technology, there was an app, and this is like 2 months ago, an app that did this, and they.
Oh, the other way, though,
they-
made you look older.
Yeah.
What
And
kind of
they
idiot would
refused-
do
they
that?
said, we own that. If you use that app, we own your image, everything that you've
If you're
done
schmucky enough
on that app.
to see what you're going to look like old, they can have it.
I look like Regis Philbin.
Really, who doesn't?
It's a threat to plastic surgeons, I think, you know. Makeup artists.
So when you were working on the films I'm going to say this, I like to watch movies at home. I hate being in the theater when somebody coughs. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about your baby. I don't want your phone to go off. I don't want to smell your cigarettes. I'm bad. But I went to see Ash, I'd seen it before, but I went to see it because I wanted to do the Q&A with Tim and the filmmakers, and I watched it in a theater full of people, and it was really like a gut punch. Like, people were breathing to it, and they were holding their breath, and they were crying, and it was really moving. And I said, I said what I say every year here, I should start going to the movies more often.
Yeah.
And watch it at home.
Yeah.
Because really, I saw
It
all
is.
your
It's
movies
a shared experience.
and it's so different.
Yeah.
Although I went to the movies once this year to see, what was that movie? Booksmart. Kitty and I went to the new theater in Kingston. It's got like lounge chairs, I don't know, insane. And we were so excited. We go to see the movie. We're the only people in there. And it's a big comedy. And so we're like laughing out loud. But that was my one experience at the movies this year. But I'm going to go more because I really felt it yesterday. I felt like people were really responding in a way that it's not when it's Steve and I at home. Although he's not allowed to get up during the movie. Nobody's allowed to turn the light on or eat. That's what I like. So.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of us have come from the theater originally or worked in the theater, and obviously that's the energetic exchange between the actor and the audience is immediate, but still that collective experience of sitting together as human beings in a room and going through an experience together. I guess that's what I was saying earlier, and not to get too paranoid about it, but like all of us I just walk down the street and people will walk into me because they're just in their phone. You know, we're so not present in the way that we were even 10 years ago. And so to sit collectively and in the dark and gasp together or laugh together, there's an energetic exchange that's going on between you and the person next to you, even if they're a stranger, and it makes us remember that we're all human, that we all experience grief or pleasure or joy, and that you're not so alone, that you're not a robot trapped in your iPhone. It's also the way that the film was like intended to be made, although that's changing now because people are making films for a little screen. But watching our film yesterday projected on a big screen with great sound was way better than when I watched it on my computer originally. You know, like it looks better. What? Thank you. That's Julia, writer, director, producer, editor. But of course, I've been moved by like watching films at home by myself too. But there's nothing like.
And you know, it's funny because
Going to the
now
movies.
I go to the theater a lot. That I do. And you know, they pouch your phones now. It's so great. They won't let you have your phone in the theater in some shows. And it's going to be in every show. It's so great because nobody's sitting in front of you with that light on their face, you know, and people have to be there. So, go ahead.
Can you guys tell us the initial spark you had when you felt like you wanted to be an actor?
Talia goes first.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in charge here, Talia. If you don't want to go
I
first.
know, I just like the word spark. I don't know, actually, but I come from a family of actors. So
Talia's dad is Martin Balsam and her mother is
Joyce
Joanna.
Van Patten.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit like a circus family in some ways, but it was, I think I was sparked by, look, I would go on the road with my mother first summer, and the summer stock, and so I was always sort of backstage watching, and I think those things imprinted on me very strongly, and then our household was always filled with actors, always reading plays or screen, whatever, you know, just this sort of collective thing that interested me, but I was not like a kid in high school who was in the play. I was very shy. I don't think you would have thought that girl's going to be an actress, but it was a slow burn, and in a way, it's hard to explain that moment, but it was nothing I really examined till later. But privately, I was going to school, to the Lee Strasberg Institute on Saturdays by myself, taking the bus. So I was investigating this on my own, apart from my family, because that's weird too, to be part of this family, have an expectation on you. And I think that just by the nature of who my parents were in terms of their focus on the work and those things, they just interested me, and I think that it was almost like a family business. I mean, and I don't mean that in a dreary way, but it wasn't expected. I just think I already knew the pitfalls. It wasn't glamorized to me at all, and I really sort of was interested in the work of it, and I wasn't afraid of it. So that's sort of what sparked me, was, I guess, the influence of my parents.
Did you do theater?
Yeah, I did. And I was living in LA, which is not really a theater town. And I did as much equity waiver as I could, I mean, I really was, and I would always try to go back to New York, but I hadn't gone to a school like Juilliard or Yale, or I hadn't gone to college. And I always felt like I was behind a wall in New York. And at the time, as a young actress, I was very much pulled to Los Angeles. I was working a lot because I was someone who had studied for a long time, was 18 or 19, looked younger, so I could work in a way in a lot of not great television shows, and was making a living very early on. But I was always pulled to New York. I always, because my mother and my father were steeped in theater, that was really my, sort of the bones for me. Still is.
Well, you want to jump in here?
Oh, yeah, you're gonna go? I don't know, I'd say, I love old movies from a very early, 12, I started. I think when I was growing up, there was that movie channel in every kind of television network, kind of area where they had the golden movie or $1 million movie on late. So I started watching movies at like midnight a lot, old movies. I love them. But that didn't, I was an athlete. That athlete kind of girls and sports were my kind of focus for a long time. But then people started saying to me, you should be an actor. And I'm like, what? I really didn't understand why people, people pursued me to be in school things, and I really didn't understand why. And I did a few things and, whatever. And then I got into the art. I was always into arts, the painting and drawing and writing and all that stuff, but not acting. But then eventually I moved to New York in my 20s, early 20s, and I ran into some people that, a guy named Tom Wright, who was in the days of punk and Underground USA. Anybody know that movie? Mm-hmm. Eric Mitchell, he produced it and he was in it. Jackie Curtis, Duncan Smith, Jackie Curtis, Patty Astor, Tom Wright, Eric Mitchell. Whatever, I moved on to St. Mark's Place, and then somehow I just got involved, and then I started hanging out with Tom Wright, and we talked in a way that I'd never talked with anyone, and then we started doing theater, just sort of in an after-hours club on First Avenue, in Rocket's Red Glares Taxi Cabaret. I kind of got Rocket's there every week, and I don't know, it just happened. That was 40 years ago. So that's, I don't know, I came up, and then I met Steve Buscemi, and he and I did a lot of theater in New York City.
Some of which is on YouTube, well worth a watch.
Really? There's some there?
Oh, yeah.
I only
You're not making
seen one.
residuals either.
No residual. YouTube TV, whatever. But acting then became something. I still don't really know why I get hired, truthfully.
Did you?
But I love it.
You went to school, right?
Yeah.
And Michael did.
Chernus went, yeah.
And Kathy?
No, no.
You didn't go to school?
No, I applied to Yale, and I applied to Juilliard, and I didn't get in, and I was crushed. But I don't know that I was really an actress for a long time. I think what I was I grew up in New York City, right, in the late 70s, early 80s, and for me, art was politics. And I worshiped downtown theater, and I would sneak away to see it. And, Mac Wellman was a god to me. Like, I worship ideas and words and thoughts, and I didn't really want to be an actor. That wasn't my goal. My goal was to be part of the revolution. And it was just the only thing I was sort of vaguely good at. Like, I can't do math, so I couldn't do the box office. And, I can't paint, so I couldn't do the sets. And, it was really just the foregone conclusion of where I was going to fit in this that is my chosen family. And it didn't I'm probably, I'm an okay actor, but what I am better at maybe is a punch through the wall. And that's what I wanted to do with my life from a very young age. And this just happened to be the only way I could figure out how to do that, because I didn't come from DC, I didn't know how to do that politics thing. And so art seemed the way to go. And art in New York at the time, it wasn't about being a great actor. It was about being like part of the thing. You're part of it. You're going to be part of it, and we're going to do it. And it wasn't about art as much as it was about the movement.
Saying something.
Saying something.
Yeah.
Bringing something to the people.
Yeah.
Making something that resonated, that took you to the gut.
Yeah, Michael, follow that, would you?
That's why. Yeah. But to be funny, too.
You have to be funny.
And while you're hitting somebody.
Mine was very simple. Like, I was not an athlete, and growing up, I grew up in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, and I just didn't really have like a social circle in my school. And I remember I had a friend, this guy Dan Shaveda, and we went in 8th grade to see a movie. He remembers that it was Rocky IV. And we were standing outside of the movie theater because my mom had to come pick us up because we were in 8th grade. And I remember Dan Shaveda going like, "Wow, movies are cool." And I was like, they are. And he was like, "Being an actor would be so cool." And I was like, it would be. and he was like, "We should join the drama club." And I was like, "We wouldn't get beat up for that?" And he was like, "Let's try." And we like marched into the woman who ran the drama club in my junior high school was also the librarian in the school, so we marched into the library, and we were like, "We want to be in the school play." And they happened to be holding auditions that week, they were doing a stage adaptation of Tolkien's The Hobbit, and they were doing Thornton Wilder's Our Town. And I got cast as Gandalf the Wizard, which was the first role I ever played. And they said, "Who do you want?" Because there were hardly any boys in my junior high school who wanted to be in the play. They're like, "Who do you want to be in Our Town?" They're like, "George is the lead, or the stage manager is the narrator." And typical actor, I was like, "Let me read it." I'm in 8th grade. I was like, "Let me take it home." And I came back the next day. I was like, "I want to play Dr. Gibbs. That's the role for me." And I just remember doing The Hobbit and walking out on stage in my stupid like Halloween costume, wizard, like a purple wizard robe and hat and fake beard. And my first
favorite thing you've ever done.
Thank you. Tim came every night. There were 2 nights, and I just remember I still remember my first line ever was, "Ah, the Shire, how delicious the morning is in this part of the world. The air is stuffed with comfort." And my old man, my dad, Dick Chernus, who was like a businessman and he loved hunting and fishing and never went to the theater, was supposedly like so moved by my performance and would like go around the house for weeks after going, "Ah, the Shire, ah, the Shire." And actually, just like that attention from my dad, though, like who was kind of a gruff, old school kind of guy, like repeating back to me words that I had said on a stage, like that kind of just connection with my father, and like the fun of being with these other kids making this little play, like that was, I was hooked. It was just, I was a theater addict immediately, never looked back.
What happened to Dan?
I just saw Dan Shaveda. Last weekend, I was inducted into my high school's Distinguished Alumnus Hall of Fame. Thank you. And Danny Shaveda like came to the ceremony, and
He didn't make it. No.
he's not an actor. Yeah.
We knew that was, we could have told you right then, Dan, keep walking, man. It's not going to work for you. And Tim, you went to school too, right?
I went to school.
Oh, wait, did you go to Yale or Juilliard?
I ended up going to Juilliard. Yeah. Very quick. I took classes at like a children's theater school in Cleveland on the like weekends, and it was kids from high schools from all over the greater Cleveland area. And there was a guy who's a few years older than me, an actor named Michael Tisdale, who got into Juilliard, and he would come back every summer and like teach and talk about living in New York. And he was just so cool. He like wore a leather jacket and smoked cigarettes, and he's like a really handsome guy. And I was like, I want to be this man who lives in New York and goes to this drama school.
Smokes.
And it was children's theater, so I was doing like Hansel and Gretel and Alice in Wonderland. And he was like, here's this play by, Eugene O'Neill, and here's a play by Sam Shepard. And it was truly like, he was a drug dealer. Like, the first one's free, kid. Here's this, here's Buried Child. And a week later, I'm like, do you got any more of those Sam Shepard plays, man? And so I just wanted to be this guy who lived in New York. And he demystified it for me. Like, instead of it being this scary thing, like, you can't do that with your life, I was like, no, I know a guy who does it. He goes to that school. So then I ended up going to Juilliard as well and moving to New York, and then,
Very
life happened.
quilty, like from, what's his name?
The Shire.
13-year-old. Oh, the 13, the quilty,
Easy for you to say.
oh, God, the character from, I can't. No. Whatever.
Okay, we're going to come back to that.
I'll get it.
Tim's going to tell us something.
It's so boring. I went to,
Speed it up then.
yeah, I will, sorry. I'm sorry, I caught that from never mind. I came from a family I love that was highly dysfunctional and awful. And for me, I got into a community theater, which meant I could be out at night until everybody was passed out. And that was survival. And I was a kid who didn't get a lot of attention, and I think I walked on stage the first time, and I was terrified. I was Prince Chulalongkorn in The King and I, which is
That's how we
what
met.
they did back. No, well, that's another one, but yeah. But anyhow, so I was playing a racially inappropriate role, and I walked on, and I knew I was home, and the attention was important, and starting out, that attention, and it transforms. There's a wonderful. Acting requires empathy. And you discover things about yourself, and there's a whole other level of it. But a really awful level, at least for me, is give me a little attention. I was then in Texas, and in Texas, you did get beat up for being in the drama department. So there was a high school for performing arts, and it was actually an at-risk school in the Houston Independent School District, but it was an arts school, and I applied, and Doreen, who was in the drama department, said, Tim, you don't want to go there. It's nothing but niggers and queers. And indeed it was, and it was the greatest place ever. There were 2 straight men in my graduating class. The rest of the class was gay, and it was that tribe. It was what you're talking about, where you went, fuck, this is fantastic. And it saved my life. Yeah, that's all I'll say. Boone, did you figure it out?
Quilty from James Mason, Shelley Winters,
Lolita.
Peter.
Lolita.
Lolita.
No.
Lolita.
Yeah.
And they, what's his name shows up, and takes her Quilty. That great character who
Go on.
Stole her away.
Bilbo.
Who?
Bilbo.
That was.
Just
Oh, the
anybody
Hobbit,
just
yes.
shout shit out here. It's good.
Free
That's how we
association.
roll. Anything you want. Is there, yes, hold on, Gordon, hold on. Hope's coming with the mic. I don't really need it, but. Well, they do for the video.
I can do this. Just a shout out to Michael, the Patriot, or Patriot rather. You know, we're mixed medium here with TV and film, but that had a lot of inspiration from Le Carre movies. And it was really, that's the kind of show, when people say, what should I watch? I go, you know, Patriot. It's just, that's my kind of thing. It's dark, it's weird, and it's, you know, just.
And
very,
really
very,
funny.
very funny.
Yeah.
I told, well, they were both in it.
Yeah,
Boone
Boone
was
and
in
I
it
both.
too.
Yeah, I'm in Patriot also.
That's right, that's
He's
right.
the star. Don't fuck with him.
That's it,
One
yeah,
of our
just-
best
that's
friends
interesting.
created Patriot, Gil Bellows, and I was telling Michael, I mean, we watched it avidly when it came out, but to do some research about these two guys, I watched it again, and I understood it. That was shocking. Like the first time, I had no idea what was going on. But this time, I was like, oh yeah, because he's never going to get the money there. That's the guy who he kills.
Hey, don't tell them, you know?
And then they get the money there, and the guy doesn't die. Who would know?
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm super proud of that show, and I was going to bring it up earlier in terms of like an antidote to some of the stuff we were talking about. I think, and one of the plus sides of this streaming stuff is that a writer-director like Steve Conrad, who is pretty specific and pretty quirky and pretty and super intelligent and super detailed in the way that he tells a story, he really approached that show as opposed to thinking of it as television, but just long-form narrative. Like it's just an 8-hour movie a season. You know, it's like it almost requires multiple viewing in that way because there's so much that happens that a streaming platform is actually perfect for it because you need to kind of watch it in the privacy of your own home and just be like, wait, what just happened? Who did what? And
Right.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
really good.
and there was the kayak.
Yes, Boone's in the
I
kayak.
had the kayak.
Great, yeah, great stuff, great stuff. But can we expect, you know, if we can expect any more of that?
Patriot's done,
the-
right?
Done?
That went down with the Me Too, because the guy who was supporting that was X'd out of
from
Amazon.
Amazon?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and so who knows? I mean,
Oh,
did you lived in Paris for how long?
Like
Doing
3.5,
the
4
second
months,
show.
yeah.
Yeah, so that was amazing to go to Paris and kind of take over Paris. It was
It was wild.
beautiful.
I don't think there's going to be a third season. Yeah.
He planned one, but.
You know, all the shows I really love.
Amazon wouldn't support it.
The mic up here. Hold on, Cuddy. She's right there.
Okay, your passion is overwhelming and wonderful, except for Catherine, not really sure where you're at.
We're on the fence here.
But I want to know, because it's also palpable that your worry is almost more important today than your passion. What are your unions? What are your figureheads? What are your people that you look up to within your own profession doing to ensure that this young lady will be able to make films in the future, or young people will be able to act? Because Mark, you said, you know, for 30 years you made a living, and that's going away. So what do you?
Who won the SAG vote?
Well, the what?
Who won the SAG
The
vote?
same people who
Oh, they
are,
did?
yeah, and they're the ones who took the union over from Alan Rosenberg and, you know, silenced the guy who was actually trying to do something, and they co-opt our union from us, and it's been kind of a downhill slide since then. Not that they were making any progress anyway, because the people who work for our union, who work as supposedly the people who protect us, the people who, like, I mean, I could get really
Go ahead.
specific here, you know.
Go ahead.
But, they don't really protect us. They really are in the lot, in the producer's lot.
So they don't think anything about the future.
It's not that. It's that we got a bunch of actors and they got a bunch of lawyers, okay? So when you go to a negotiating table, you go with your lawyers. Don't bring your actors. And that's what's happening in our unions. And also, actors are scum, okay? I was doing a play at Signature. All right, whatever. I was doing a play at Signature, right? And they told me, I love Signature, it's a beautiful theater. And they told me that they were allowed to do a tech week that was, I think, 70 or 80 hours for the same $736 that they were paying. And I said to them, okay, well, is that against federally mandated minimum wage standards? And they were like, you're an actor. And then I ended up meeting the head of equity on the corner of 43rd and 9th at the time, and I reduced him to tears. And I said to him, how dare you agree to a contract in which my tech week could provide me with a wage that is less than federally mandated minimum wage standards? And he goes, well, nobody's going to do that many hours. And I was like, but it's allowed. And he said, well, you should be grateful you're working.
That's what you get all the time. And you get either take it or leave it now. It's like, take it or leave it.
And equity, I have to say, is the worst of all,
Well,
pretty much.
Astra,
Yeah, well, that's,
and there's.
but you can't make a living wage. Talk about
dealing
young
with that.
actors in off-Broadway. It's like we're all kind of doing a hobby. And if you are an heiress or something like that, that's great, but it's hard to make a living. Once you start having a family and all the other things that go with that, it's impossible. Actually impossible.
I'm a tightrope walker, and
He actually
I have a
is.
lot of circus friends without a union, and it can be worse. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
I'm very grateful for healthcare I have. I'm very grateful, and we lived luckily through a period when we made money and have a pension and things.
No, 100%. And I do, SAG provides health care to my son, my husband, myself at a very affordable rate. And I am grateful for my union. I want us to be stronger. And I do feel like we sometimes subsidize art, actors do, and don't get the tax rebates or, if you're going to do a play for $736, why aren't you getting a tax rebate from New York City? Because theater in New York is what is it? It's almost $1 billion industry when you think about, infrastructure, support, hotels, the bridge and tunnel crowd who's coming to see the theater, what it's doing for taxi cabs and transport and the restaurants. And yet that actor, and how can a young actor make it? I went up to Genji, who created Orange, who is a very loyal gal. And I said to her, thank you for paying my mortgage. And she gave me I would just get raises. And that was coming from her. And there are a lot of people in this industry who understand and care and give. And I'm grateful because I was able to do Harris's film. And Harris made a film called Beauty Mark. And that was made for $65,000. Okay, and that's a micro-budget film. And I was at the SAG Awards, and I met this very famous actress who, we were talking about indie film, and she said that she felt one of the best performances she ever gave was an indie film, and no one would ever see it. So these are the issues, right? And thank God there's a platform here that we can talk about them. And thank God you're asking these questions,
We have time for one more question, or somebody could tell us what they learned for the movies that they didn't know before.
I just have a simple question. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It has to do with technique of filmmaking and acting. I'm getting really old. What's with the whispering juxtaposed with the Wagnerian bombastic music where I have to ride the remote like a surfboard? Is that for effect? There's a lot of whispering going on in delivery in film. You're agreeing where people say,
I know what Rick's talking about.
And then da-da-da-da, and I think in a theater, that makes sense. on television, wow. My cats, I have to peel them off the ceiling sometime because I have the remote on so loud. Anyway, that was kind of humorous, but there's a lot of whispering going on in film, especially in British film. We joke about, you want to watch a British film? And I'm like, I don't know, I had a noisy day in the car today. My tinnitus is too bad, I'm not going to be able to absorb it. Any comment on that?
It's what happens if you're a punk rocker, Rick.
Oh, yeah.
Boone, that's Liz. It's her sister who wrote Sons, Regina.
Oh, hi. Yeah, no. I love Regina.
Okay, we have one last question.
This isn't really a question, but just a comment on what everyone's been talking about today. I am that young actress, and I'm still optimistic.
That's
Good.
great.
And I
Yeah.
think talking about it is
Yeah,
really
don't listen
important.
to them.
I think our resistance is talking about it and telling people about that show that you think no one's seen. And I've told everyone to watch Easy.
Thank
It's
you.
one of my favorite scenes ever.
Thank you so much.
It was really inspiring that last season. So good. So.
Thank you.
Thank you
And
for saying
you're 100% right. Well, thank you all. This was a great day. Thanks a lot.
I will, but it has to be quick because